Morning everybody, this is going to be my first video. Translocation is the topic. A couple of keywords you need to know before we start. First of all, you need to understand that this here is a plant, which hopefully you do, and we've got the leaves. These are going to be the source. What I mean by the source is that is where the sugars are being made. And then down here we've got a tuber, so there's a potato. That is going to be my sink. That is where the sugars are going to be used up. So let's just recap that. You've got your source, where it's being made, and then all the way down here, you have got your sink, where it's going to be used up. Now, let's go to the next slide. We all know photosynthesis happens in the leaves, and that is where our glucose is going to be made. The glucose will then be turned into sucrose, and it's sucrose that will get transported around the plants. So let's have a look at the cross section. What we've got here is we've got our leaf cell. So again, we can see that our glucose is being made, converted into sucrose. That then gets moved into a companion cell. A companion cell contains a lot of mitochondria. That mitochondria will release energy, and that energy will be used to actively load the sucrose into the phloem. Now, I use the word active, which means that energy is required, and that's why you'll find a lot of mitochondria in this companion cell. Now, because of all of this sugar, the sucrose that's in the phloem, that's going to lower the water potential. So that means that water is going to want to move into this phloem, and that water is going to obviously be moving from the xylem. And the xylem, as you know, runs next to our phloem. So there's our xylem, and you can see here that water is therefore moving in via osmosis. That is going to create a high hydrostatic pressure here, because remember, wherever you have a lot of fluid enclosed within a vessel, such as phloem here, then we're going to have a high hydrostatic pressure. So here you've got a high hydrostatic pressure. In comparison, down here, you have a lower hydrostatic pressure. So what's going to happen is you're going to have a movement of stuff from here all the way down to there. Now we call that mass flow. There is a flow of mass. There's a flow of stuff from here all the way down to there. And that is how the sugar actually moves through the phloem, or at least that's what we think. At the moment, it's still a hypothesis. We're not 100% sure, but it kind of makes sense. Now, let's have a look at what happens when we get to our sink. So here's our sink. Our sucrose has reached this point here. Again, it will be now actively unloaded into the companion cell, so we'll need energy, and that's going to be provided by the mitochondria. And then from there, it will move into our tuber cell, where the sucrose will get converted back into glucose and then stored as starch. So we are going to have lots of sugar moving from here, the phloem, into there, and then finally into our tuber cell. Now, this is the fascinating part. What will happen then is, because of all that sugar that is moving out of the phloem, what's going to happen to the water potential? Well, it's going to cause the water potential to increase. And that means that water will naturally move out via osmosis back into the xylem. Now, when that happens, it's going to cause the hydrostatic pressure down here to decrease. And because the hydrostatic pressure down here has actually decreased, well, that obviously continues the flow of substances from the higher hydrostatic pressure area, which is obviously further up here, closer to the sink. Sorry, closer to the source. Sink's down here. So hopefully that now explains translocation of sugars. Remember, it's bidirectional. So this is what would be happening in the summer. you can see that it's moving from the leaves, which is our source, into the sink. And then in the winter, when there's no leaves, this will actually now be our source, and sugars can be sent to the rest of the plant. Very useful in the spring when you need a lot of sugar for the new growing regions. So there we are. Translocation. Done.